Hello and welcome to the writing overview for general students for task 1. So today we're going to talk about what this overview or what this task looks like and everything that you need to know to do a good job on it. So what exactly is the task 1 for general students? Well, it's always going to include writing either a formal or informal letter. You need to include the information that you are asked to include in the question, and you have to write at least 150 words, and you should finish within 20 minutes of writing. Of course, you need to use correct spelling and grammar, and you should have paragraph format. Okay, so one of the important distinctions for this task is knowing the difference between a formal letter and an informal letter. So if you're asked to write a letter to maybe a landlord or to a boss, something like that, then it's a formal letter, right? As if you were in a job interview. That's kind of how you want to think about it. If it's something to a friend or a relative, you know, if that's who the letter is supposed to be written to, then it's informal. You can be much more casual in your writing. Okay, so to further distinguish between these two, we have an example of a formal letter question. Okay, so here we go. You have a full-time job and are also doing a part-time evening course. You now find that you cannot continue the course. Write a letter to the course tutor. In your letter, you should 1, describe the situation, 2, explain why you cannot continue at this time, and 3, say what action you would like to take. So because this is to a course tutor, this is more of a formal letter. So what does this mean? It means you should use formal language, dear sir or madam. That's a good way to start your letter. And then you should introduce yourself. You know, you can say, for example, I am an employee at your trucking company. Or in this example, you might say, you know, dear sir, I am a student in your evening course. When you finish your letter, you want to finish with something similar to, you know, sincerely, and then put your name. So you want to have a fairly formal ending to your letter. And of course, because it's a formal letter, you want to avoid personal details, right? Now, if we look at an informal letter, here's an example of an informal question. Last month, you had a holiday overseas where you stayed with some friends. They have just sent you some photos of your holiday. Write a letter to your friends. In your letter, there's 3 things you have to do. Thank them for the photos and for the holiday, explain why you didn't write earlier, and invite them to come and stay with you. So this is a letter to your friends. You can feel free to write informally. So instead of saying, dear sir, you know, if it's your friend, you would probably say, hi Jim, hi Pam, hi Sally. Of course, you can use phrases, you know, I hope you are doing well. So you might start an informal letter, something like, hi Jim, I hope you're doing well. It has been a long time since we've talked. And of course, when you finish it, you can end with a more familiar phrase, you know, warm, love, something like that. And then your name, of course, because you're still writing a letter. Okay, let's look at an example. And this is to show what I mean by including the required information. So this is that casual letter that we just talked about, thanking the friends for the photos and for the holiday. So you can see we have Dear Michaela. Okay, that's our starting. Dear Michaela. What a nice way to start. And then at the end, we end it with warmly, Kimberly. Now, in between, we have 3 different paragraphs, and each paragraph answers or does one of these tasks. Okay, so thank them for the photos and for the holiday. Well, that's done in this first one. We can look at it, and it says right here, I want to thank you dearly for our 2-week trip to the Maldives and for these photos. They turned out better than expected. So that's done. This task is done in the first paragraph. Then explain why you didn't write earlier. I'm sorry I haven't written earlier, but you know what life is like with a new baby. Tom and I have been up for 48 hours straight and haven't had much time for ourselves, let alone writing letters. So you can see this is answering the second point. And I also want to draw your attention to the informal writing. You know, because this is an informal letter, it's okay to use contractions like, you know, have, not, haven't. In a formal letter, you want to avoid doing that. Now, if we look here, invite them to come and stay with you. When everything settles down on our end, I'd love for you and your family to come for a visit. So that's the invitation, okay? And you can see that this is a very friendly letter. You can use things, let me know your thoughts, little details like that. But the main point here is that all the required information, all three of these, are in the letter. And this is generally what you want to do. Give each of these points their own paragraph, make sure you answer them. And of course, this is very important. You can see it's 166 words in total. And that's very important, because if you write less than 150 words, then you will actually score lower. So maybe you're writing at a band 6, but if you write less than 150 words, your final score will be 5.5 or maybe even a 5. Okay, now let's take a look at a formal letter. So this is the tutor letter, and it's the same in the sense that all three of these points are answered in one of these paragraphs, in each of them. Now, what are the differences? You can see that we start with Dear Sir, and there's an introduction, because this is a formal letter, so you need to say who you are. This isn't quite as familiar as when you're writing to a friend. My name is Michael Curtis, a student in your ecology course on Tuesday and Wednesday evenings. So that's fantastic. We have that introduction and the purpose of the letter. You also want to include the purpose of your letter. I am writing this letter to inform you of a scheduling conflict between work and this course that I unfortunately cannot avoid. So that's the situation is described, why you are writing the letter. Explain why you cannot continue at this time. That's all in here. And then say what action you would like to take. And that's in here. I'm very sorry for any inconvenience this may cause you, but I was hoping that I could switch my program to next semester instead. Okay. And then, of course, so you want to be, as you can see, you want to be very polite and formal throughout your letter. And finally, you should indicate that you want a response, right? I look forward to your response. Best regards, Michael Curtis, 165 words. Okay, so this is, it's very similar, but just a few differences there. And of course, notice this pattern of writing. We really recommend you write in those 3 paragraphs, include all the information, and then you should be doing quite well. Okay. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. You really need to be careful with your time on this, because when you do your whole writing, you have 60 minutes for both task 1 and task 2. And task 2 is a much more complicated thing to do, so you need to give yourself at least 40 minutes for that. That means for this task 1, you should really not take more than 20 minutes to do this, okay? So that's it for this. The writing task 1 is fairly simple. If you have any questions, please write them down to ask us later, and we hope this has been helpful. Thank you.